Bad lawyer jokes are an old genre, but if you're a consumer, finding a client-focused practice is serious. If you're an attorney, understanding today's ethical duty of care is critical. Anchored by current headlines and showcasing major legal minds, Ethical-ish speaks to consumers and attorneys about the modern, transparent law practice. Sponsored by Case Status, powered by LawPods.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ethical-ish. I'm extremely excited to be joined today by Renee Morgan. And Renee is in Smyrna, Georgia, I believe. Correct, Renee?
That's correct.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. I know we're going to dive into this provocative topic of mental health and the crossroads of legal practices and legal clients and where the ethics sort of comes out in that conversation. But before we get started, maybe we talk a little bit about you and your background. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Thanks, Paul. I'm always grateful to have the opportunity to speak on such an important topic as mental health, especially in the arena of legal practice. I was born and raised in Georgia. I've been married for over 10 years to my wonderful partner, Chris Morgan, and we are currently raising our 5-year-old son, Vincent. I am a litigator through and through from day one. I take cases from the first phone call and work them all the way through trial and even appeals. I'm barred in Georgia, but I also practice in other states and federal jurisdictions on an individual basis through pro hoc vice, which is Latin for this one time. This year, I've litigated in Florida, California, Michigan, Texas, and Tennessee on a pro hoc vice basis.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure the attorney listeners out there certainly know what you're talking about, but, sort of the layman, and that's me. We do have a lot of consumers, everyday people that join Ethical-ish. And so, again, your practices have served everyday people for the most part. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mainly represent individuals or small businesses all the way up to even churches. Even churches get involved in litigation. So I've represented just about everybody from, every type of walk of life. Half of my practice has been devoted to criminal defense as well. So I've been tremendously lucky to meet all kinds of people from different walks of life and hear their stories. And they're all amazing, wonderful, unique people with vibrant lives.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, kind of in the category of first responders. I know, there's traditional folks that fight fires and police officers, but I also think of medical and attorneys now. There's a lot of service out there for our communities. So really cool. So let's dive in a little bit. I came across your name as I was doing a little bit of research on what are called continuing learning courses for attorneys, and basically to keep certified and keep your bar license, right? That's what CLEs are all about. But you were talking about a very sometimes taboo topic of not only ethics, but also mental health. And so maybe give us a little bit of background of why you're passionate about this concept of mental health in your practice.
So the concept of mental health in practice is incredibly important because recently science has really focused on something called second-hand PTSD. And it was really identified after 9/11 when counselors and therapists began developing symptoms of PTSD after they were counseling survivors and emergency response personnel, those first boots on the ground. And they found that these counselors and therapists were developing secondhand PTSD. Years later, the scientific community is starting to put more money and time into research into how this phenomenon occurs with attorneys. I will get a phone call at 8 a.m. in the morning and someone's telling me about how they, have lost their child and almost lost their life in a hospital, trying to consult with me about a medical malpractice case. And so attorneys in receiving these phone calls and taking these clients, you have to sit with these clients through incredibly traumatic experiences, car accidents, loss of life, injury, or, how losing their whole lives and their businesses, due to changes in the economy or due to, someone breaching a contract. All it takes is one devastating moment, and then someone's coming to you with that devastation and saying, please help me. Is there anything that can be done under the law? And as attorneys, we are called counselors, and that word I think is very applicable because we do a little bit of counseling in the sense that someone brings a traumatic experience. They have to recount that traumatic experience, not only to me and explaining what they're looking to accomplish by hiring an attorney, but again, that story has to be told again, sometimes multiple times at mediation, in front of a jury, again, at the Court of Appeals, if it goes back and the judge orders a new trial. So a client is going through their traumatic experiences, and the attorney is there sharing and becoming a vessel for that story. And as a result, we can develop, unfortunately, fatigue, burnout, and secondhand PTSD due to exposure to the trauma of our clients.
Very interesting. I never thought about that. You think about the clients that you serve, you often think about the stress and anxiety that they're going through, but not that it's a transitive property, I guess, that it can and build up. And if you have case after case, I guess it kind of compounds a little bit there. So again, kind of a taboo topic. I think of Ted Lasso. I'm a big Ted Lasso fan. And I think in that series, if you followed it, they brought a lot of mental health sort of to the surface and trying to bring it. What's the stigma these days? Are a lot of people talking about it, or is it still kind of taboo in your circles of the professional attorneys?
It absolutely is still very taboo within the legal industry, although it is starting to become more into focus. Non-attorneys can sometimes present information in continuing legal education for attorneys, as well as attorneys themselves. I did hear one speaker last year. She was talking about how she had written a book, her memoirs for her, showing her life experiences. And she went into great detail about her mental health struggles. And she was working on a case, and this has happened a couple of times to her. She would be working on a case, and there's attorneys representing the other side or multiple parties involved. And one of the attorneys, personally criticized her, saying, "You're unstable, you aren't able to handle things, you aren't realistic, you've gone through these struggles," implying that it made her not qualified to be an attorney or not qualified to speak on her clients', facts or the law. And it just scares people. It scares people to put vulnerable things about yourself out there for other people. And some people, may react negatively. And the only way to combat that is just continuing to talk about it in the public arena, like we're doing today.
Yeah, no, I love bringing this topic to bear. And again, I think about it as any healthcare issue. Ultimately, it's the protected information between me and my medical provider at the end of the day, right? So it doesn't necessarily need to be public, but certainly takes some public discussion to get other folks to acknowledge it and to address it. So it seems to make a lot of sense there. I'm glad that the conversation is starting to explore a little bit more.
Me too, especially since I believe in the first couple of years of practice, 3 attorneys committed suicide and were really in high profile news within Georgia. One of them being a very beloved and well-known attorney who had served, in membership in different ways with the Georgia State Bar. And I think that if we, increase the normalization of talking about mental health issues with our coworkers, our friends, and our family, I think that some of those deaths could have been prevented if we had been more forthcoming or more and discussed mental health more openly without, the stigma that's associated with it.
Yeah, definitely a slice of America there. Nobody's insulated from that. So tragic, to say the least. Kind of changing gears a little bit. This is ethical-ish, right? It kind of spills into the area of maybe the gray areas of right and wrong. So I am going to, take a little bit of a jump. Is the mental health side of and the challenge of being an attorney representing people in the sort of secondhand PTSD? I'm curious, do you think that inserts itself into the relationship with clients? For example, if I'm not able to take care of myself, I think of, every time I fly on a plane, the attendants are telling me, if we lose pressure, take the oxygen mask, help yourself first, and then help anybody around you that needs it. Does that metaphor hold true here? Does not taking care of yourself first as a legal professional potentially impact how you're relating, the ethical nature of your duty of care with your clients? Do you think that there's a connection there?
There is a connection. So the professional model rules are put out by the American Bar Association, and most U.S. states have adopted model professional rules that track along with the ABA's rules. There are also always discrepancies, always differences, with that vary from state to state. But Georgia in particular has adopted the model rules almost entirely. And those model rules are a great guideline for how to practice. Not every a violation of the rules doesn't necessarily result in you losing your bar license, but some of the rules, violation of particularly holding onto client funds or mixing client funds or stealing client funds, those are the big ones that will that will get you disbarred or could prevent you from being hired because people can see that you've been publicly reprimanded for violating some of the bar rules. But the professional rules are also a good way to manage the client and attorney relationship. And if an attorney is completely burned out, experiencing PTSD, it's completely untreated, they're avoiding work, they're avoiding clients. Every time the phone rings, they may have a panic attack. And it's hard to get work done if you're constantly reacting to things that cause you to experience either a panic or an anxiety attack. So it's hard to meet your ethical obligations when you're panicking and confused and having a difficult time in responding to ordinary messages or ordinary traumas.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I mean, I can think of being proactive versus reactive. I would say a lot more anxiety in my world is when I'm having to react to that which I'm not expecting, and it throws me off, right? I can only imagine in the communications. Of course, at Case Status, that's one of the things that we live and breathe. But yeah, in a daily grind, you want to be somewhat predictive of what's coming and handle that. So I don't know, the ABA model rules of engagement, you say some states adopt, I guess it varies on sort of to the intensity of each state bar and how they use those model rules. Is that generally a state by state consideration?
They do have some unique variations. So some states are incorporated as a commonwealth. So I went to law school in Virginia, so I got to learn a lot about Virginia's constitution, and they are a commonwealth, so they have more differences in their professional rules than Georgia, which was incorporated as a United States state. They do things differently. The Commonwealth has a slightly different history and form of government that makes it a little bit different. And every court in every state is structured differently for the state courts as well. And then there's also codes of ethics for the federal courts, which are, the United States is divided up into different districts. So there's a lot of rules that you have to read when you start practicing in a new state. The first thing I do is I go check out, what are the local rules here for the state that I'm operating in? Let's go look at the professional rules of conduct, and let's look at the local rules that are specific to the one court that I'm practicing in.
Yeah. And I think you had a CLE, and I think that was where I came across your provocative discussion about, ethics and duty of care and mental health. So definitely a crossroads there, and communications, I think, was kind of the metaphor that you were describing. Awesome. So, kind of changing gears a little bit back to the PTSD. I mean, most of the attorneys I meet are kind of altruistic deep down. I mean, I guess the ones that don't really make that connection with their clients and don't feel that PTSD, maybe it's not altruistic at the end of the day to help people. But what is your general sense of your peer group of attorneys out there that service everyday people? Do you think that they got into this career because of that aspect of helping and assisting these people in their time of need?
Absolutely. Without being passionate about the law and passionate about helping people, it's very hard to go through very traumatic, sort of getting an email at 4:30 on Friday, somebody's filed a motion against you, your heart rate increases, your breathing increases, you might start sweating a little bit. Now you've got this problem in your practice that you've got to respond to. In Georgia, you have 30 days to respond. In federal court, for certain types of motions, you only have 14 days to respond. So it can be very intense. Those deadlines don't care about what you've got going on. You can always request extensions, of course, but you're not always guaranteed to get them. So managing the traumas of things coming into your email inbox and disturbing your mental health, while at the same time, maybe you've got a deposition or a mediation where your client is sort of having a meltdown. And I've spent many hours in courthouses and in law offices, going to a hallway or to the bathroom and telling my client, it's going to be okay. You're not going to die today in this mediation or deposition. Let's do some deep breathing. Here's our plan of attack. Here's how we're going to collect ourselves and self-regulate our emotions as we go back into this legal process, because time waits for no man. We have to return, to speak to a judge or to speak to the other side and continue the proceeding, which can be incredibly stressful for clients and incredibly stressful for attorneys as well.
Yeah, but I think again, PTSD is not a good outcome, but the fact that the representing counsel cares is a good thing. I mean, if I'm a consumer out there listening to this podcast, my question is, how do I find that team? How do I find somebody who truly cares? I don't want somebody that necessarily the mental health issues are going to get in the way. I hope that they have found ways to manage those, but I want somebody ultimately that has that heartbeat. What is your guidance if you were at the Thanksgiving table with family and they were looking for a particular attorney in their area? How do you find somebody who really truly is set on helping the people around them?
So all of the research has found that most people hire the first attorney that they speak with. The first attorney that you speak with may not be the best fit for you. I recommend that at least you talk to at least 2 or 3 different attorneys at different law firms, not 3 attorneys at the same law firm, to sort of get an idea of a baseline. You ask them the same set of questions, 2 or 3 different attorneys, and you'll see different responses. You'll see different people exercising different listening skills. Someone who's an active listener, doesn't interrupt you, restates back what you've said to confirm that they understand what you've said, are all good signs of a good attorney. Listening, restating what you said to show that they understand, and then also not making you any grand promises. If an attorney's making you a grand promise, I never do that, because nothing's guaranteed. There's always things that are up to the other party or their attorneys or the judge, and those are factors that you can't control. So guaranteeing someone an outcome is entirely unrealistic, because the outcome is dependent on so many different factors that I simply don't have control over. However, I can demonstrate knowledge of the law. And I can say, well, here's the potential claims that we could bring. Here's the likelihood of whether or not you could recoup your attorney's fees or additional damages like punitive damages. And so I feel like the best way for someone to evaluate an attorney is make sure they're an active listener, make sure that they're repeating what you've said so that they're demonstrating understanding and comprehension of your problem. And 2, they're giving you a little bit of law and saying, these are the potential claims we could bring. Here's the possibility of this, but not making any grand promises. That would be my bullet point list I would give out at Thanksgiving, which I may end up giving out over Thanksgiving because people always ask at the
always ask. Yeah. The doctors.
You're a lawyer today.
That's right.
Tell me about this.
Help me out. Yeah. Red flag. Well, that's good. No, I think that's solid advice for those everyday people out there. Again, I always joke that we don't want to hire you, Renee, but when we have to, it's the most important thing in our life. And right. So to your points, right. You don't want to go with that first one. You want to make sure it's somebody who really has that belief of helping you bring justice in whatever way that we're talking about, depending on the practice. So awesome stuff. Again, to me, some of the highlights that I'm hearing are, the attorneys who care, right? That's a slippery slope, because that can bring you into that secondhand PTSD. But if we're all reasonable about it in the profession and we take that and go in eyes wide open, there are ways that we can stay ahead of that mental health challenge. What few points would you maybe give to your peers out there of ways that they could, I don't know if you have a few 4 or 5 key points for the attorneys out there to best manage that mental health with the ideas of what you've talked about that can, insert into their world. And then I've got a couple more questions and we'll wrap up.
Sounds good. So honestly, and I have my own mental health journey, just as everyone has their own mental health journey. Also growing up in the age of information, where the information all over the world is instantly available at your fingertips. The minute you wake up and grab your phone, you can see what's going on in China or Mexico, or, even your own hometown. You can see all the tragedies that happened the night before. A lot of the focus in mental health and protecting yourself, you just as a human being in today's day and age, but also as an attorney and having to, come in contact with survivors of trauma, exercise, doing gratefulness exercises where you sit down and you may write or just mentally think of 4 or 5 things that you're grateful for. Mindfulness, which is where you're getting in touch with your body, just sitting with your body and seeing how it feels. Meditation is also another great coping mechanism. Those are healthy coping mechanisms that help reduce your stress and help reduce the impact that being exposed to trauma. There's a great body of science out there. I'll let the experts speak on how well those healthy coping mechanisms help, but I find that there's a huge net benefit if I'm incorporating regular exercise. I'm a Taekwondo student right now. I'm a purple belt. I've been practicing and taking lessons for about a year. I really enjoy it. It's a great community. It's a great workout, and hopefully I'll develop some skills. Combining that with the gratefulness exercises, being mindful about how your body feels and engaging in meditation are healthy coping mechanisms that help reduce the impact of exposure to trauma. versus traditionally lawyers have engaged in substance abuse, high risk behaviors. Those are unhealthy coping mechanisms. They don't necessarily reduce the stress, but they may kick the can down the road a little bit while potentially creating additional problems.
How about technology? I'm curious. I mean, again, that's within and makes sense. I'm curious if you've run across any, AI is a big term, power of data. I can think about in my daily life where I maybe take a little bit of burden of getting work done by, having an assist from Google Maps or, asking Alexa to, help with something. Have you seen where technology does help in any of the challenges that are coming in to the attorney practice?
I love technology. Technology is great. I think a lot of people have fear when looking at AI and incorporating AI into their legal practice. But I think that there are ethical ways to incorporate the use of AI, which can greatly help you. For instance, I use AI, and I've used a variety of different programs, just trying them out, seeing what they have to offer, and they're all helpful to a point. You have to understand that AI can hallucinate. This is a term come up by the industry where AI is giving a response, but the response that it's giving is not accurate or truthful. And so anytime you're using AI, you've got to fact check everything that AI says. In the law, it's very important to understand what are the legal terms of art. If I'm coming before a judge or a jury, I have to say, I'm bringing this claim for breach of contract, or I'm bringing this claim under OCGA, the Official Code of Georgia Annotated. I have to know those code sections. I have to know the terms breach of contract. How do I acquire those terms? Typically, you would research cases and read case law, and that's how you would acquire that knowledge. AI helps you to accelerate gaining those terms of art. It's really good at telling me what terms of art are related to the area that I'm investigating or researching. And then I can rigorously fact check everything that AI has said to me, and I'll find out the answer in the law or in the code sections or in case law. And ultimately, I get my answer from the original source, the case law, the codes, the statutes. But AI is a great way to help you gain those terms of art much faster than just sitting down and spending 10 hours reading cases. I can probably save myself 10 hours of researching cases by just doing an hour of, well, let's have a conversation with AI as if they're my co-counsel and see what their knowledge is. But the biggest caution is that AI can hallucinate. It can give you statements that are untrue. And you really have to verify absolutely everything that comes out of AI. I would never use AI to write a brief.
Yeah.
But it's going to help educate me in the beginning so that I can write that brief by using the statutes and the case law and using, the knowledge that I've built up.
Yeah, no, I think those are great highlights. It helps us get work done and the speed, and again, I think that's good news on both sides, right? To be faster, but ultimately there's this voice out there, is AI going to replace, the JD? And obviously not, but it can assist those folks who harness it correctly so they can get work done quicker and apply to more cases or more depth to a particular case. So I think that's pretty awesome. Well, Renee, I appreciate you sharing all of these, thoughts and perspectives. Again, for our broad audience here at Ethicalish, where can we find you out in the world if we're not in Georgia? I know we've got the CLE that you're talking a lot about communications, but aren't you a writer? Are you working on a project right now, I believe?
I am. So I am a member of different attorney professional organizations, just like there's professional organizations for all types of industries. One particular association I am a member of is the Georgia Association of Women Lawyers. It is the oldest professional organization in Georgia dedicated to supporting female attorneys. They have invited me, along with others, to write a chapter sharing our experiences and wisdom aimed at women who are lawyers or women who want to be lawyers. My chapter is dedicated to shedding light on the second-hand trauma that attorneys can experience in their legal practice. And it also talks about how the legal community, law schools, employers, judges, and lawyers all need to be educated on how to protect themselves and have, employers sponsoring the education for these healthy coping mechanisms. Like I mentioned, exercise, gratefulness, mindfulness, meditation, rather than engaging in unhealthy coping mechanisms like substance abuse or high-risk behaviors. You can also find me online at, I've worked for 2 law firms. I have my own law firm, which is where I spearhead my CLE continuing legal education efforts. And that is Rand Law. And you can find me at ramlawga.com, or you can find me at my firm where I handle all my civil litigation. That is going to be through Weiner Nathan Phillips, LLP in Atlanta, Georgia.
Love it. Well, we certainly appreciate you spending the time. And again, to our audience out there, you heard it. If you're having a need for an attorney, you've got a little bit of insight into how to find that empathy and somebody who's really going to fight, for your cause. We'll keep an eye out for that chapter. I think it's going to be a double down on what we talked about today. Can't wait to see what we can learn about that PTSD and that folks can get in front of it. Action is the best antidote to anxiety. Put some of Renee's words to action and good things will happen.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, thanks, Renee. That was an awesome discussion, and we really appreciate you sharing your voice. And for those out there, we appreciate you joining Ethical-ish. If you like what you hear and we're sharing some value, we encourage you, whatever app you're on, to subscribe so that you can be alerted to those future episodes. And we really look forward to seeing you on one of those future episodes. Have a great day.
Lawyers and legal consumers, you are our audience and our biggest strength. If you find Ethical-ish a good investment of your time, please spread the word. Until next time. Sponsored by Case Status, powered by LawPods.